But they planted some great seeds, and they were great role models for me. And they allowed me to kind of go behind the curtain, open the hood, if you will, and see a little bit about how they became successful and some of the decisions that led to their ultimate success. What I did not know at the time was the intersection of being neurodiverse, which I am. I have dyslexia and ADHD, and it was undiagnosed. It was undiagnosed until I was 34.
So you already gone to law school, graduated from Spelman, graduated from Harvard, and then you find out that you have dyslexia. Keep going. That's an amazing story.
Well, and it's amazing because when I looked back and I was able to put all the pieces together and connect the dots, there were a lot of aha moments. I didn't pass first grade because I couldn't read and I couldn't do math. And by the grace of God, my two sisters were extremely smart, and my mother was very aggressive and very assertive. And so they made an agreement with the school, with the elementary school, that I could go to the second grade if I had a tutor all summer. And so I think during that summer, I don't really think that I learned a technique for learning how to read. I just said to myself, okay, my dad dropped me off here and he dropped my sisters off at the bus going to Girl Scout camp. This is not going to be my whole summer.
Right.
So I think
I'm not missing camp. I'm not missing all
camp
the things.
The whole summer.
Hey, Geniuses, and welcome to the show. Hey, Genius, make the connection. I am your host, Dr. Genie Snyder. Each week, we bring in genius guests who are going to share with us a little bit about their genius and how they inspire the genius in others. So I invite you to relax here on our podcast couch, take a few minutes, and you're about to meet our genius guest of the day, Melanie Cook. Melanie is the CEO of Veritas Management Group. Melanie is an attorney by trade, and she brings her expertise into the work that they do in public health with Veritas. But she has had many intersections in life: a Spelman College graduate, a Harvard Law graduate. Her legal expertise, her knowledge of people, her management expertise brings it all to the table. But her conversations about how her life of dreams and her preparation for that have brought her to this point as a successful businesswoman. But you're also going to hear how she wanted to be a DJ originally, and that is all part of the story and part of her genius. So she is a CEO, she is a speaker, she is an author, and it is so exciting today to introduce to you, for you to meet on our podcast couch, Melanie Cook, CEO, Veritas Management Group. And as always, we invite you to subscribe, like, and comment on our show, Hey Genius. If you have a few extra minutes, we'd love a little extra love, and you can write a review of our show wherever you watch or listen to your podcast. Hey Geniuses, and welcome to the Hey Genius Show. I am Genie Snyder, your host, and I am so excited today to introduce Melanie Cook. She is the founder and CEO of Veritas Management Group. And I want to dive right into our conversation because we have so many great connections to cover. So, Geniuses, step right into the studio with us, and I'd like to introduce you to Melanie Cook. Hi, Melanie.
Hi, Genie. How are you?
I am great, and I'm so glad you're here. And I have to go ahead and jump in with this question.
Sure.
How are we connected? We always talk on Hey Genius and in everything that we do with the Genius team about connections. How in the world do we know each other, and where did we first connect?
Well, our parents were best friends.
Yes.
So it's really hard to pinpoint a specific date that we were friends. Probably since
we were larvae.
Yes, exactly. And I think as adults we came together when you recommended that I become a member of the Georgia College and State University board.
Yes, I've even forgotten about that
Exactly. And so you you role modeled me then.
Aww.
And I really appreciate that. And since that time, we have just connected professionally. I saw you at Chastain Park one day,
right.
And we keep threatening to do that again. So our intersections have just been wonderful, but we have our parents to really thank for the friendship.
We do. So they were friends first, and then we grew up together, always together. But I do love the the continual connections at all different stages of life. And now you are in management consulting, business consulting, all the things. So we want to talk about how we continually have those connections. And I know that connections are important to you. The woman knows everyone. And so that was evident when we were just in DC together just a few months ago.
Yes.
You pulled a crowd together for a really special celebration. What was that?
So we were celebrating the fact that my sister had been installed as the first African-American woman to sit on the Federal Reserve Board as a governor of the Federal Reserve Board.
Yes.
And we were celebrating that just monumentous event.
It was. Dr. Lisa D. Cook now serves on our Federal Reserve Board. She's very busy right now.
Yes. A little too busy if you ask me, but that's okay.
In bringing all of those folks together, what I saw in that was you brought all parts of yours and your sister's lives together and celebrated those. And I see you making those connections in all kinds of directions. We also talk in this show about different intersections in life. You have not done the same thing your whole life.
No.
So what did you, I want to talk about a particular intersection in life, but first tell us a little bit about what did you do first? Like, what did you go to school to do? And tell us a little bit about that background.
So originally, when I was growing up, I wanted to be a DJ or a reporter.
Okay, now I did not know this.
Exactly.
A DJ or a reporter.
Right.
Two very different things.
Very different things.
Okay.
And interestingly, I wanted to be a DJ first because that's all I could see in Milledgeville. We didn't have any reporters because there were no TV stations in Milledgeville.
True. We always had to watch the Macon news.
Right. So it's very true that sometimes you dream as much as you can see. And so my mother hearing that, my mother and my father, they started to expose me to other things. And so I started thinking about, okay, well, actually, I like the reporter part. And I used to tell my mom, well, you won't have to worry about where I am because I'll be on the 6 o'clock news and you'll be able to see me every night.
How old were you when you first realized that? When you got serious about the reporter career?
Interestingly, when I was growing up, people would always ask, what do you like to do? What do you want to do when you grow up? And I used to like to talk. And that's, but I didn't want to.
We have that in common, folks, yes.
And I felt like, okay, I need to say something a little bit more professional. So that's when the DJ part came up and the reporter part came up. But I kind of made a pivot in my first year at Spelman. Because at that time, I'm kind of dating myself, but at that time, the Iranian hostage crisis was going on, and some reporters were part of the folks that had been kidnapped. And so my mother kind of got really scared about that. But of course, as a young person, I was like, they're not going to kidnap me. If they kidnap me, I'll talk my way out of it. So that really didn't deter me.
Okay, not afraid of kidnapping.
No, I wasn't afraid of kidnapping because I didn't think I would be kidnapped. And so I guess when she realized that wasn't going to work, she kept piling things on and things that just did not really deter me until she said, well, I said something about, taking over whoever was the CBS evening reporter, maybe Dan Rather, the anchor. And
you were going to be next after Dan Rather.
Absolutely.
I got it.
And so she said, well, you're probably going to have to start in, a small little town. And, so I said, okay, well, that's not bad. I'll do that and then I'll move to New York.
Right.
But then what she really got me with was the amount of money that she thought that I would make. And she said, well, you're probably going to start out making about $19,000. I was like, there is no way. I'm going to college to come out to make $19,000. And so that's really what kind of started me thinking, maybe I should look at something else.
That is hilarious. And the DJ part, what drew you to the original DJ direction? Because I want to know how these two came together.
Pretty much because at that point, DJs weren't really spinning records. It wasn't like a DJ at a party. It was a DJ on the radio, and they were mainly talking.
Oh, right.
And a little bit of music, and I love music. So it was really the intersection of two things that I really liked, music and talking to people. So
I love it.
So that's the origin of how I got to go to law school. And ironically, I didn't really, my mother was really undercover about what she was doing, right? So
Mary was very good at that.
She was very good at that.
She was stealth.
Yeah, but she revealed herself because as soon as I said I wanted to go to law school, she popped me in her car, drove me to Barnes & Noble, and we bought a law school admissions test prep book as a freshman in college. And so
She was just waiting for you to come around and
for me
get
to
to
come
the
around.
decision.
Absolutely.
Hilarious.
So then I kind of sucked my teeth into wanting to go to law school at that point. And I started looking around while I was at Spelman as a sophomore. We had a chance to go to New York, a bunch of folks who were interested in law, and we got a chance to see different lawyers. We saw a lawyer that was working for NBC. We met with a judge, Constance Baker Motley. That was just amazing. We also got a chance to meet with defense counsel, and we just saw all these different types of things. I could tell that the courtroom piece was not for me.
Got it.
I like to debate, but just for whatever reason, it just did not resonate with me. But what resonated with me was the business part. We met two business lawyers, the one for NBC and another woman who was doing railroad work at the time in private practice up in Harlem. And so those two people kind of encouraged me, looking at them, encouraged me to want to pursue my business interests as it related to law. So applied to a bunch of law schools. The president of my college encouraged me to
The president of Spelman.
the president of Spelman encouraged me to apply at Harvard, and I told him I didn't want to go because it was too cold, and he threatened to call my dad.
Don't go to Harvard. It's too
It's
cold.
too cold.
I'm calling your daddy. Okay.
He said, I'm going to call your dad. My mom had just died, and so he knew that I was kind of in, still dealing with that. I mean, literally, she died 2 weeks before I started my senior year in college. And so this was the fall, of course, that you have to apply. So I was still kind of dealing with that. And I guess he figured that I really wasn't thinking straight. So he was going to call my father and get him to encourage me to see things in the right light. So I did apply. But, New York, being in New York was my first love.
Right.
But I got into NYU first. I got into Georgetown first, then NYU, and then Harvard. And the woman who was the city attorney of Atlanta at the time was a Harvard Law graduate. So they called her and said, hey, talk Melanie into coming to Harvard. And she did. And she served as my mentor for a long time. And I haven't turned back. But one thing that I knew, Genie, is that in going to law school, one of the reasons I decided to go was because I knew that all the things that I wanted to do, being a lawyer would set the stage. I wasn't one of those people that said, okay, I'm going to do one thing for 40 years. I knew from the beginning I wasn't going to do that. So my trajectory in my profession mirrors what I planned. I planned to kind of work in each area for about 5 to 7 years, and that's pretty much what I've done. The only thing that was on my list, the only two things that were on my list when I was growing up that I have not done professionally, I want to own a restaurant and a shoe store.
You still want to own the restaurant and the shoe store?
But I've done everything else.
You heard it here, folks. All right, be looking for those things. So you just talked about a number of intersections of thought, intersections of decisions, intersections of people, and mentors. So mom and your judge mentor were probably, helping you move to that direction. But I loved what you said about I hadn't gone to law school just to be a lawyer.
Right.
It was setting the stage for something else. So let's talk about another intersection that happened, because clearly you graduated from law school at Harvard and practiced law first. Tell me about the intersection of when you moved from doing law, however you did that, and moving into your current lane.
Right.
And if you were going to name that intersection, what would the street signs at that intersection be called?
Dreams and preparation.
She didn't even flinch with that question. Dreams and preparation at the intersection of that. So let's talk about now, catapult us into where you are now with Veritas Management Group. You are the founder and CEO. So I imagine you didn't come in with 50 people with you. How did you start to move from the law background into business? You obviously always a strong interest.
Right.
Tell us about that and the leadership part of starting that company.
Sure. Well, it was an exciting time. I knew that I wanted to go into business. I wasn't quite sure what business I wanted to go into. So
before you do shoes and restaurant. Right.
Exactly.
So this is the preliminary to that.
Exactly.
Got it.
And someone asked me the other day, was I risk averse? And I said, absolutely. I said, if you look at my background, you would think that I'm not. But actually, I take safe risks.
Okay.
Going to Spelman, not big of a risk. Going to Harvard Law School.
Getting kidnapped, not that big a risk.
Right.
Got it.
Right. And so the risk averse part is when I decided to leave, I decided to start a company very much like the company I was working for. So I kind of duplicated their business model. And the owners and the officers in the company were very good to me. And they were my role models while I was working there. I don't think they knew exactly what they were doing in terms of planting that seed, but they planted some great seeds, and they were great role models for me. And they allowed me to kind of go behind the curtain, open the hood, if you will, and see a little bit about how they became successful and some of the decisions that led to their ultimate success. What I did not know at the time was the intersection of being neurodiverse, which I am. I have dyslexia and ADHD, and it was undiagnosed. It was undiagnosed until I was 34.
So you already gone to law school, graduated from Spelman, graduated from Harvard, and then you find out that you have dyslexia. Keep going. That's an amazing story.
Well, and it's amazing because when I looked back and I was able to put all the pieces together and connect the dots, there were a lot of aha moments. I didn't pass first grade because I couldn't read and I couldn't do math. And by the grace of God, my two sisters were extremely smart, and my mother was very aggressive and very assertive. And so they made an agreement with the school, with the elementary school, that I could go to the second grade if I had a tutor all summer. And so I think during that summer, I don't really think that I learned a technique for learning how to read. I just said to myself, okay, my dad dropped me off here and he dropped my sisters off at the bus going to Girl Scout camp. This is not going to be my whole summer.
Right.
So I think
I'm not missing camp. I'm not missing all
camp
the things.
The whole summer.
Right.
So I think I really just kind of figured it out. I think I started memorizing. I really can't tell you how I learned how to read. But I did enough so that I could get to the second grade. And from that point on, I think that was the beginning of my figuring things out. If the path was not easy, or the path was not clear for me, but it was something that I wanted. So I may not have gotten there the same way that other people got there, but I would get there and I would just figure it out. And so school was not easy for me. But I quickly learned how to identify my strengths and really kind of overcompensate in those, because there were some things like math. I mean, I had to take math, right? You can't go through school without taking math. The only math class that I did well in school was geometry, and that's because it's not.
You see the
all
design.
math.
You see
right, and it's words and things like that. And so I just learned how to maneuver and make sure that I stacked my deck with things that would overcompensate. And that was the story of my life, overcompensating. When I took the bar, if everyone else was recommended to do 200 practice questions, I did 400. And so for most of my life, since I was undiagnosed, that's how I attacked life, just overcompensate. So when I was diagnosed at 34, since I finished school, the psychologist I was working with said, well, let's focus on how you better manage your career. So fast forward to my business, I had learned how to kind of stay away from certain things if I don't feel like I did them well. And numbers obviously was one of them. But you can't run a business if you don't know numbers and you're not comfortable with numbers. And I found that out the hard way. I thought that I could, let my CPA and my bookkeeper and all that make decisions and do all the financial stuff. And I quickly learned that that's not true. So I had to use my CPA as a coach and use some other people as a coach to really learn financials and how they connect to my business and what kind of decisions I should make using my financials. And that's why right now I am such a champion of neurodiversity, because I don't want anyone else to suffer in silence like I did.
Let's talk to our studio audience.
Okay.
We know that there's probably a lot of people out there. In fact, we have another common friend that we grew up in Milledgeville with who also found out he had dyslexia while he's doing his dissertation for his doctorate. So there's so much that we do not know.
Right.
Our audience is typically full of entrepreneurs, leaders, and leaders of leaders. That's what we do. It's what you do. What do we need to know, both from, clearly, we are always looking for people on the Hey Genius show that clearly are geniuses, that you're telling us about your genius already. How do you pull out the genius in others? How do you help either folks that work with you or people that are your clients or people that we don't know yet, as leaders? How are we aware of how to address neurodiversity in ourselves, in others, in people that report to us, in people that we're trying to work with. Ideas for people. What do we need to be having our antenna up about?
Sure. So I think the first thing is to understand that neurodiversity does not mean that someone is, incapable of achieving.
Clearly. Clearly.
A couple of studies, I'll just throw out some statistics. Ernst Young did a study about 2 years ago, and they did a study of neurotypical and neurodiverse people, and they found that the teams that had neurodiverse people typically scored better in innovation. Because we think outside the box.
Okay.
And so a neurodiverse person on your team could be the missing puzzle piece that you need to kind of break through those, those cycles that you have thought all the ideas that your team could come up with, and a neurodiverse person might come in and look at it differently.
So the genius would be the genius would be that they're coming in from a different perspective with a different mindset, perhaps with different questions to move the rest of the term you used was
neurotypical. So neurotypical.
So it helps people shift out, get into a different, change out of their normal constructs. We talk a lot about complementary, contradictory constructs, things that don't make sense together, intersections, turning into complementary concepts. And that usually can come from a lot of different ways, sometimes just asking questions, but different types of people looking at the same thing together. So that's exactly what you're talking about here.
Exactly. Another thing that we found is that, especially since COVID, a lot of large companies like Amazon and some other companies are actually aggressively and intentionally seeking neurodiverse staff members, particularly people with autism. So Stanford has a special program for people with autism. And so as we see them be more integrated into the corporate fiber, we'll see things that are, that are a little bit more flexible. HR practices will be a little bit more flexible to support the population as we integrate more into the workforce. So I'll drop a few other things. Oftentimes in the past, since the corporate arena probably was not the arena that was the most welcoming for neurodiverse folks, you see a lot of neurodiverse people that start businesses. Up to about 35% of entrepreneurs have ADD or dyslexia.
I can believe it because you need to have energy in a lot of different directions. And so that sometimes looks like unfocused. In fact, it may be bringing, though, lots of different focus areas together.
Right, exactly.
Thus, why we're all entrepreneurs.
Exactly.
So that is so interesting. And now, because there are more studies on it, and maybe we're just more aware.
Absolutely.
So if we are leaders in our companies, we are looking for folks that might bring that different type of innovation, might bring that something different to the table.
Exactly.
So talk about how this plays out in your company. So in Veritas, both in the work that you do and also talk about when you started your company and where you are now. You've been in business how long as Veritas?
So 2016, so we'll be celebrating 7 years in a few months.
Wow, 7 years. That's a great number for an entrepreneur.
Exactly.
And you start out with a few people
two.
Or one, or how did it begin?
Myself and one other employee that we started out with. And now we're at 90 people in 4 different countries.
I'm sorry. We just went from 0 to 90 different, in 4 different countries, 90 people in a little bit of time. And what do our 90 Veritas amazing people do, geniuses do?
We are a management consulting company, and we have different service areas. Because we were in Atlanta, and because I started supporting the CDC with the company that I used to work with, that was my first client.
CDC,
the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Exactly. So a lot of what we do is in support of public health.
So important. Wow.
Absolutely.
Now I see why you survived the pandemic. You were busier than any of us, right?
It was, I was kind of busy during that time. And because of the pandemic, we really couldn't travel during that time. We were at a particular growth stage. So we said, well, let's just double down and really figure out how we can provide more support to the CDC. We got an opportunity because of my sister being our corporate chaplain. We got an opportunity to also provide some religious services support to the military community.
So you've got one sister we've already talked about. Now you've got another sister who is a corporate chaplain.
Yes.
Wow. So clearly I know her, but tell our studio audience about Pamela.
So Pamela is an ordained minister and a licensed chaplain. And so she came on board to be our corporate chaplain. We didn't really know what that was going to look like. I had one idea and she had another idea that she wanted to basically minister more toward the employees and the staff members. And I wanted her to kind of go out and talk about ethics in business. That's not really who she is. And so one of our partners said, well, hey, you know, if she's your corporate chaplain, why don't you all look at these religious services contracts in the military? So she found that niche. And now we have 5 contracts with the Army and the Air Force to support the warfighters and their families from a religious standpoint.
That is amazing.
Yeah, it's a very small part of our business, but it's a very important part.
Well, it is. And you obviously, with Veritas, look for intersections.
Absolutely.
Everything you have said has been about, well, we had this connection, so we looked for this intersection.
Right.
And then what an interesting niche with religious services for the military. Right. But that you even, beyond that she is your sister, where did the thought come from of even, because not a lot of companies have a corporate chaplain. So how did you develop that?
I think it comes from, and I was thinking about this in terms of intersectionality, and I was thinking about how my father was a minister and my mother was a nurse. So obviously that combination, you know, I have a heart. I serve with the heart. I leave with the heart. And so, and I also want to make sure that we're in good with God. So, but
having the strong faith piece. I don't know how you're an entrepreneur without that. But
I know, exactly, exactly. But I always think
without.
about that. And I think about, you know, from the medical, public health side, my mom and my dad, not only was he a minister, but he worked at Central State Hospital, which serviced people that were suffering from mental illness. So that compassion is something that runs very strong in our family, and it runs very strong in my leadership style. People tell me that I'm a cheerleader as a leader, and that comes directly from my dad being a minister. And so, once again, all those intersections. And so, like I said, I had a different notion of where the faith and business piece was going to go. And Pamela has taken it in a completely different road. And I'm as an entrepreneur, if it's making money, sounds good to me. Let's go.
Complementary concepts.
Absolutely.
Just for the audience that may not know, Central State Hospital was in Milledgeville, Georgia, and at the time that we moved there, 12,000 patients. So it served a huge community. And so that is where we grew up, basically living there and interacting, and both of our dads were chaplains in that, in mental health. And so that has been the intersection of, you know, your parents raising you in that direction. And so what I'm continuing to hear is those decisions of unlikely things coming together, the contradictory constructs, into something very complementary. So now, as your company has grown, why would somebody call Veritas? We got it, the CDC, we can't all compete with that, large client, but why would someone look for your company? How do you help people with that entrepreneurial spirit?
Sure. So basically,
and serving with heart.
Right. So when our customers come to us and we get calls, because people have heard that we produce superior products, that because of our collective experience and familiarity with public health and with all the different other areas, they know that they're going to get somebody who understands the environment and that can develop solutions. Solutions made simple is one of our taglines, that we can develop solutions that are cost effective and that really are customized to solve their problems. So that's really why people call us, and we're nice to work with, I think.
And they're fun people, right? So I come in with a problem that is related to public health, health equity, et cetera. You help me kind of figure out how to go with that.
Absolutely.
Small companies, large companies, government.
All in between.
I know the government you've mentioned, but so.
And large corporations, we work with universities, we work with medical institutions, we work with large national nonprofits. So we envision that we will continue down that road, but more than likely the government will always be the predominant force in our customer mix.
Got it. Got it. How in the world at this point did the DJ reporter gal now, where did even those dreams, you said you were at the intersection of dreams and
preparation.
So when you were the reporter DJ person, but you moved through all those different parts of your life, and now, what would you call your role now? I get it, you're founder and CEO, but what is the role as leader that you? Let me ask you two ways. What is the role that you spend the most time in as leader? You may define that any way you like. And the other side of that question is going to be, of all the things you do as founder and CEO of Veritas, what do you love to do?
Sure. So the thing that I spend most of my time doing is making those strategic decisions. You know, which direction are we going in, meeting with partners, kind of establishing those relationships. And then I'm fortunate enough to have other people on my team that can kind of take it from there. But that's my role. As you said, I know a lot of people.
Great leader.
Been in this industry for a long time. So bringing people together and understanding what their problems are, but not at a very deep level. That is one of the things that I spend a lot of my days doing. What do I love? I love the business development. It's networking. It's really helping to understand a problem and kind of putting together the right team. I also like the fact that I have a platform. So 2 years ago, a friend of mine asked me to be part of an anthology, a book anthology, and the title of the book is Business Success Secrets. And we were presented with the challenge of answering these questions that really talked about how did you become successful as an entrepreneur? What was that defining moment? Like you said, what was that intersection? And so the title of my chapter was From ADD to Harvard. And I just talked about how, you know, I went from not being able to pass first grade to graduating from Harvard, all without even knowing that I had dyslexia and ADD, that had such a profound impact on my life that I didn't even know. And so those challenges and overcoming those challenges, that's what really helped me to be successful in those early years of my business. I thought that when I quit the company that I was working for before, I quit at that particular time because I thought I was in the process of buying another company. But the wool got pulled from under me with that company, and I had to make a decision. You know, are you going to go back and ask for your job back, or are you going to try and make this work? And I just prayed about it, and I just knew it was time for me to move on. Those folks have been great to me. Still have a very good relationship with them now, but it was time for me to move on. And so I took that leap, and here I am today.
You took a number of leaps. You took some brave leaps.
Yeah.
You were at the intersection of dreams and preparation. You've used wanting to be a DJ to weave in. What I heard you say about DJ was you liked, and everything else that you've said, you like that connection. How do we make something flow? How do we make these things go together that might not make sense?
Right.
Being a reporter. And you also, I don't know if it's relied heavily on, but learned so much from all the mentors in your life.
Absolutely.
And what I appreciate so much is how much those still play in the decisions you make now.
Absolutely.
And that is a strong leader. Okay, I've got one little quick question,
Sure.
10 seconds.
Okay.
What's your hidden genius that we don't know about Melanie Cook?
I would say my hidden genius is being humble. Humility is definitely my superpower.
And she knows yet the power of it. Melanie Cook, founder and CEO of Veritas Management Group, former DJ, soon to be shoe store owner. You will be able to read in our show notes of the Hey Genieus show all about Melanie and how to get in touch with her and her company in all the different directions. As always, I am humbled with all my guests that sit on this podcast couch, and I am so excited to hear and learn about even people that I know. There's a lot I didn't know today. So I encourage you to have those genius conversations with people out there. Read the show notes, and as always, we want you to please like, comment, and subscribe, and follow the Hey Genieus show. We're here every Thursday, and we'll look forward to seeing you. Bye, Geniuses.
Thank you.
I invite you to go to one of the restaurants of Mad Hospitality, the Dining Room, Mad Taco, the Sinclair, Heart and Crown, or maybe you just need a little bite from the Patisserie on Main, the French Bakery. Mad Hospitality has a group of restaurants that you will not want to miss.